is the first major extensive book on different forms of political organization. And Aristotle discussed, oligarchy and kings and so on, and decided that of all the systems, democracy was probably the best. Didn't love it that much, but he said it's better than the others. But he pointed out the same problem. He was talking about Athens, not about a country. But he said in Athens, if everyone had the vote, the majority of the poor would use their voting power to take property away from the rich. And he also felt that that was unjust. And he provided a solution, but it's the opposite of Madison's. Aristotle's solution was to reduce inequality. So then the problem wouldn't arise. And he proposed what we would now call welfare state measures, common meals, things like that. Madison's solution was reduced democracy. What you read about American foreign policy is that it's dedicated to bringing democracy everywhere. What the press sometimes calls our yearning for democracy. You take a look at policy, and it's quite different. In fact, there are extensive studies, scholarly studies by very mainstream, in fact, rather conservative authors. The main scholar who works on this topic, most respected scholarship, is by a man named Thomas Carruthers, who describes himself as a neo-Reaganite. He was in Reagan's State Department working on democracy promotion issues, so he's not giving a radical critique by any means. But he's a good scholar, and what he points out is basically that the U.S. supports democracy if and only if it accords with economic and political and strategic objectives. So the U.S. was very much in favor of democracy in Eastern Europe because that undermined a major enemy, but it's opposed to democracy in Latin America, where we run it. And he shows that it's much more nuanced. For example, during the Reagan years, the U.S. Opposed the democratic movements in South America. There was progress in democracy in South America, where the U.S. had little influence, and it was opposed by the Reagan administration. Nearby, where the U.S. has this enormous influence, there was much less progress for democracy corresponding to U.S. influence. And he points out that the U.S. was willing to support democracy just in case power remained in the hands of traditional elites with which the U.S. had long-standing connections. His conclusion from this is that presidents are all schizophrenic, but there's a different interpretation, pretty obviously. Well, and in fact, if you look case by case, you see it all the time. His own studies go into the Bush administration, but it goes way back.